And welcome everybody to Still Curtain. I am Tommy Jagai, editor of StillCurtain.com. Joining me today is Ike Taylor, 12-year veteran of the Pittsburgh Steelers, two-time Super Bowl champion. Ike, how is it going today? Thanks for joining me right before the NFL season.
Hey, appreciate you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Not a problem at all. I appreciate it. Tell us, it's been almost a decade. I can't believe it because I remember when you were first drafted. So I'm aging myself a little bit here. It's been a while since you've hung up your cleats for good, back in following the 2014 season. Tell us what you've been up to since retirement and what do you have going on today?
A little bit of everything. Watch my son grow, develop as a man. Jump into the scout department for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Will Gay and I have been into real estate. Got a cigar line with my brother Howard. You can go to howardgcigars.com. So really, I've just been keeping myself busy, staying in shape, training kids, and pretty much everybody. So even though I'm retired from football, I'm still working.
It definitely sounds like you've got your hands full with juggling a couple of different things here. Let's talk about scouting for a minute, Ike. You obviously played with Joey Porter Sr. During your playing career. You overlapped 4 years, and most of your NFL career, he was also playing football. What can you tell us about scouting Joey Porter Jr., and what type of relationship did you have with him prior to the Steelers drafting him?
So first of all, answer your first question, like the relationship was scouting is something I always wanted to do. I was fortunate to be an active player and to sit in some of the meetings with the scouts and the GM at the time. It was Kevin Colbert. Built a relationship not only with the Rooneys, but with Omar as well, as if he was a GM. Now Omar is a GM for the Pittsburgh Steelers, now and present. But I was just always interested in that part. I thought I always had an eye. I thought I always had great evaluation, and Pittsburgh wind up putting me on board last year. So I'm so fortunate with that. As far as Joey Porter Jr., just a kid, ball boy, born and raised in the city of Pittsburgh, the 412, a natural born Yinzer, so say, understood what it was or what it is to be a Pittsburgh Steelers. Been to the playoffs with his dad, been in the locker room with us, been to training camps with us, been to Super Bowls with us. So he just gets, by nature, off of default because he was born and raised at a time, was winning championships and going to Super Bowls, what it is to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Passing the torch, this number 24. I love the story hearing about that. It's like almost like Joey coming to you and asking for your blessing to do that because that was your number. And so I wrote an article not too long ago after Porter was drafted, and I was racking my brain. I'm like, I want to come up with a player comparison, and everything it kept coming back to you. I try to avoid like it has to be a Steelers comparison, but he just seems so similar to you in a lot of ways. Do you think that Ike Taylor is a fair NFL player comp for Joey Porter?
No, I don't like when we do that. But as far as like comparisons, Troy Porter Jr. is going to be his own man. As far as like that 24 jersey, I'm not a Troy Polamalu or Mean Joe Green, so I was just leasing. I just tell people all the time I was just leasing that number. But as far as my blessings, he the one told me he wanted it. So when he said he was going to get that 2-4 jersey, I was like, the first thing that came to my head was what his dad was saying about me at home. So what I mean by that is he was talking good about Ike Taylor at the crib, and his son overheard or heard, or he just sat down with his son and was like, you know what, we got us a dog at this cornerback position. His name is Ike Taylor. I'm telling you, watch him in a few years. So the reason why I think Joey Porter got that jersey, not only did he see me, but it was the conversations at the crib that his dad, Joey Porter Sr., was having with friends, relatives, and himself. So when I saw that, that's the first thing that came to my head, because usually Joey Porter Jr. at the time, he didn't know me, but he knew me off of the conversations in my mind that his dad was having about good old Ike Taylor.
Interesting. I love it. Joey, I know the rules have changed a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball, even since you've last played. Did you have any advice that you've given Joey Porter Jr. on just anything at all about just managing the position of the cornerback, and maybe something that you might not have been very open to during your playing days?
Well, I was open to everything. You got to understand, man. I grew up around legends. You know, Dick LeBeau, Troy Polamalu, Casey Hampton, James Harrison. So I played with a lot on my defensive side. I played with a lot of either now Hall of Famers or future to be Hall of Famers. And we ain't even going to talk about the offensive side. So I was pretty much open to everything. But when you got a coordinator like Dick LeBeau, that book going to have to open. That mind going to have to open. You're going to have to evolve. We talk about a living legend when you want to talk about Dick LeBeau. And at the same time as well, Coach T just came from Minnesota. His first year head coaching, the defense coordinator, it was 1-2. It was between certain categories between us and Minnesota when it came down to the defense side. So, man, I was just fortunate to be around a lot of Hall of Fame coaches and a lot of greats that I played with.
Let's talk about you for a minute in your playing career. You don't last 12 years at the professional level without a certain type of mentality, swagger, attitude at the cornerback position. You had that. It was so easy to see. And I love even just watching you pop up on the screen and say, Ike Taylor from Swag and You. And so tell me how important that attitude is when it comes to playing the cornerback position.
Man, cornerback position in my mind got to be, other than the quarterback position, it got to be one of the toughest positions on the field. Why guys running forward, you running backwards. And you got to anticipate and have instincts to understand what the offense is trying to do and what a receiver is trying to go. And we talking about world-class receivers. So the window of error when it comes down to playing corner is very slim. Just like the window of error playing corner in the NFL is really slight to none. So for me, my attitude always been be a dog, you know, and for me that was being aggressive. What I did finally understand when I did have a bad play, let it go because they need me for the next one. But for me, man, it was I don't give a what attitude, and my back always was against the wall. You know, that was my mindset. And it was pretty much F everybody except for guys who wearing black and gold. So that was my mindset. So, and that was kind of immune to me just on how I was raised at the time. Between 1994 and 1998, I don't think people understood. Like New Orleans was like one of the murder capitals of the world. So I lost a lot of friends, you know, in that time, and it just made my skin super thick. Being a walk-on at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, getting a scholarship my junior year, playing running back my junior year, going through some things my junior year, and just crossing over 1 year at being corner. So for me, they would call me raw because I really didn't have no experience when it came down to the cornerback position. But they loved because I was so aggressive and I had I don't give a what attitude, speed, and size. So my mentality always been strong, but I really do believe that my mentality was like that because me growing up in a city at the time where you just had to be tough and mature at a young age.
That short-term memory was very easy to see on film. Like if you would get beat, you'd bounce right back and make a good play the following play. And so that was one of the traits that I loved about you watching you. I know you're not that old, but we don't have a lot of like testing numbers on you coming out. Like there are rumors that you ran as fast as a 4.18, which is absurd coming out of college. So I want to know, and NFL Draft Scout has your hand time at like a 4.35. What were you? What was your 40 coming out?
My best time was like a 4.29. My best time, and that was hand clock.
That's blazing.
My average time was in the 4.3s. So, but that was from pops. My pops died a couple of years ago, and they had a few people talking about my pops at the funeral, and all of them said the same thing. They never saw my dad lose a race. So genetically, God have given me speed. Then I had to use, like Coach T would like to say, from the neck up. You just had to use your football IQ and take it from there. But your speed definitely wasn't an issue until I got older in the NFL. But Yeah, 4.29 was my fastest, but I stayed in the sub 4.3s.
That's blazing fast. Like you already talked a little bit about your early days, your college days, going from running back at Louisiana Lafayette, and then making the transition to NFL cornerback. So you went through being running back, cornerback, 4th-round pick, and kind of working your way up the ladder, only earning 2 starts in your first 2 years, and then finally becoming a full-time starter in year 3. How hard was it to be patient through that whole process?
Man, I had to enjoy the process. Don't forget, one of the reasons I was going to make the team was playing on special teams. So I was the kick returner, and I played on every special team. But at the same time, just playing 1 year of college football, I was just fortunate that, the organization and Coach LeBeau was patient enough with me for me to grow and develop. Now, once I grew and developed, once he told me what I need to work on in the offseason, I took off. I didn't take nothing for granted. So that's exactly what I did. To this day, it's still hard to outwork me. So that's just been instilled in me since the day I was born. But for me, I always like the challenge. I always love the challenge. So it wasn't Ike, you're good at this. I got off more on please tell me what I can't do. And in that professional world, it's a lot of people that'll tell you what you can't do. So the more you told me what I couldn't do, man, the more you put more gasoline on my fire, so say. So like you say, 12 years, there's people in the regular world, in the corporate world that can't keep a job for 12 years. I kept a job at a professional level for 12 years and was very successful.
Like you talked about some of your former teammates, and my goodness, you were part of such a legendary group there. But then I watched these videos of like Troy Polamalu breaking down and crying, talking about his relationship with you and with Ryan Clark and what it meant to be part of that defense. Can you describe what that relationship was between not only just defensive backs, but everybody on the team?
The brotherhood. When it comes down to defensive backs, like we understood as long as we didn't argue with each other because of the position. And what I meant by that, we the last line of defense. So a defensive lineman can mess up. They got to run it. They got the linebackers to make them right. A linebacker can mess up. They got the secondaries to make them right. We can't mess up on the back end, or it's going to be a high-scoring game. And at that level, you really can't mess up on the back end. But we had a defensive coordinator who played that position, so he really understood exactly what it was to be a safety in the corner. And we're talking about Coach Dick LeBeau. So he made it a lot easier for us because he had some kind of understanding. He just so happened to be our defensive coordinator too as well. And that's rare as a defensive coordinator. Usually your defensive coordinators are linebacker coaches or defensive line coaches. It's very rare you have a defensive coordinator who was a former cornerback, so say. So we understood and we took advantage of that when it came down to it. It's the brotherhood of the whole defense, though. When we was winning games, at a high level consistently, we did more with each other off the field than on the field. So you got to be intimate as far as like families, birthdays, kids. We understood exactly, and you didn't want to let them down. So when you got on the field, you didn't want to let that brother beside you or them 10 other brothers on the field down, regardless on what it was, because it was more off the field brotherhood than on the field, and that carried over. So we was just an unselfish group at the time. We cared and loved each other. We didn't want to see each other hurt, whether it was on the field or off the field, and regardless on what you was going through. And we just wanted to make each other proud at the same time. But what I did like about that group we had when I was playing, we was brutally honest with each other, So your skin had to be thick coming into that locker room. If somebody said something to you, you couldn't take it the wrong way. They were just saying it because they cared. There was no such word as this person is hating. Nah, this person really wants to see you grow and develop and be the professional they think you can be. So we had a lot of guys that came in and played outside their body, meaning they played a certain way, they played at a level because they understood what it was to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Well, that was definitely evident. It's easy to see just how much you guys care about each other. We mentioned Troy Polamalu here, and obviously you started your career with him back in 2003 and coming into the NFL draft, and you both finished in 2014. What was it like to start and finish your career with Polamalu and have him there joining you on that journey throughout the way?
Man, I said all the time, man, God blessed me with a few angels in my life. When it came down to Dr. Joe Murray, he was my principal in high school. He went to Louisiana Lafayette. He got me in that college. Then it comes down to Dean Barry. Dean Barry was my dean at college. He saved me a lot of times academically when it came down to Louisiana Lafayette. Got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the only pallbearers other than his intermediate family with Paul Rooney at his funeral. So, and then now Troy dropped into my life. So Troy is just different. He's just a different human being, you know. So he's rare. Guys like him don't come around too often who's walking this earth. So Troy blessed me with a lot of grace. Like, even though I'm older than Troy, I always tell Troy in a lot of different categories I look up to him. I look up to him by the way he carries himself and what he is as a man, a person, a Christian, and as a husband. So the football part wise was easy. As soon as I saw Troy in practice, I already knew he was a Hall of Famer. He was different. So I said, dang, this dude way better than me. Let me see how long I can ride his coattail. You know, so they say iron sharpens iron. And when they say that, they usually mean that about the opposite position. So usually when you got a good receiver, which I had my whole career with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going against in training camps and practice. But Troy sharpened me as far as like a person and to be a better player. So dude, just a unique dude, man. He's one of the few that's walking this earth. So I was just real fortunate on coming in and leaving out with him.
Well, I appreciate your humility there, Ike, but you were a good player yourself. I mean, in the middle of your career, you established a reputation as you were one of the lockdown cornerbacks in the NFL. And because of that, like you just didn't get the Pro Bowl appearance. Was there ever a year or multiple years where you're like, you felt like you were snubbed of Pro Bowl honors?
Well, you know, with the Pro Bowl, it all came down to interceptions. And I had a few interceptions, but I was my proudest moments when I played was on Wednesdays when Coach LeBeau came into the meeting. It was like, Ike, you know who you got this week. So, and it was the team's best receiver. So for me, T, it was more like, man, if I don't catch it, they ain't catching it, you know? And it was no such thing as safety help when I was traveling with the team's best receiver. It was IQ lock up on him, take care of your business, and we're gonna do everything else. So that was like my proudest moments. At one point in time, when you get older, you know, I just had to sit on one side of the defense. But when I was in my prime and Coach LeBeau and that defensive staff and Coach T was like, you know who you got this week, I felt very good about that. My teammates felt very good about that. So they liked me over a lot of other receivers. So, man, it was an honor, and it's hard. It's hard, but I wanted that challenge every week. If they didn't give me that challenge every week, I was pissed off, and they knew it. But at the same time, man, it was just an honor for me in those days playing 1 year at cornerback. You got to understand, man, a lot of these guys in the league who played corner, they've been playing corner all their life. You know, so in high school, I played defensive end, and I was the wing T guy because we had a wing T offense. So for an organization to put all their trust in a 1 year guy and to be like you play the team's best receiver for a span of like 6 to 8 years, that's all it means to me. Y'all can have the Pro Bowls, I understand. It came with the interceptions, but at the same time, nobody was locking up receivers like how Ike Taylor was locking up receivers.
Well, and you get the last laugh in the end with those 2 rings anyhow. So, Ike, I know a lot of people would pretty widely consider you the best cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 2000s. That's a pretty big honor. There was always one knock in your game, and as you mentioned, it was the interceptions, 14 picks in 12 years. Did your teammates ever get on your case at all? How were they after you dropped a pick?
All the time. All the time. All the time. Man, it was just that. But they knew when it came playoff time, for some reason, my hands woke up. You know, so I tell people all the time, Pittsburgh ain't paid me for the regular season. Pittsburgh paid me for the playoffs. They knew I was catching the interception or two to seal the deal or to help the offense out when it came down to the playoffs. So that's what really counts. You really want to get hot at the end of the season or during big game moments. And usually that's for the playoffs. So As long as you handle your business in that division, and that was the AFC North, and locking down because you always want to be first because you guaranteed a playoff spot. And as long as you handle your business in the playoffs, that was another reason. So that's what I put my hat on. That's what the proud moments of me had came about.
Well, you were definitely an integral part of that legendary defense there in Pittsburgh. Ike, playing 12 years in the NFL, you obviously went against a lot of really good receivers in an era where there were great receivers in the NFL. I loved watching later in your career the battle between you and AJ Green in Green's early part of his career. Who's the best receiver that you've ever faced?
Man, the best receiver I ever faced was AB, and he was on my team. And I tell people that all the time. Like, the dude was just different. He's just different. I mean, we can all see now that he's just a different dude. But at the same time, when it came down to football, I think AB had a 6-year span when nobody in the league was better than AB, and I'm talking about quarterbacks included. I saw it from when he was a rookie, and then like his third year when we started getting the ball in his hands and he started making plays, he just took off. So AB at one time when he was on the scout team, he was making my job easy in the game. And that's no disrespect to anybody I played against on the opposite side who wasn't a Pittsburgh Steeler, but that's how good that dude was when it came down to being in practice and training camps.
Yeah, he really was. There were so many to choose from. You played with Hall of Fame players. Who is, if you could just pick one, who is the best teammate that you've ever played with before?
This Troy, hands down. Like, just I had all live access, front row seats, in court games. Just watching this dude, just making plays after plays after plays after plays. Mr. I need a play. Mr. Clutch Moments, Mr. Let's seal a deal, Mr. Troy, we need your help. I mean, Troy pretty much carried instinctively that defense. I'm talking about plays. We didn't have a few games, and what I mean a few, I'm talking over 20 games where, pretty much everybody on that defensive side at one point in time was like, Troy, we need you to make a play for us, and you can understand you can't understand because that's a lot of pressure, but that's what Troy just did. Whether we told that to him verbally or we was just thinking that stuff in our head, or we were just sitting a couple of seats alongside of Troy and talking to each other like, dang, it's about that Troy Polamalu time when he gonna make a play for us. So Troy by far, and I didn't play with some Hall of Famers, but Troy by far in my mind was definitely different and special.
He was certainly a different type of animal, and not a lot of people can replicate his game, if anybody. Ike, let's talk about the current Pittsburgh Steelers for a minute, if we could. How good do you think this rookie draft class is now? You're in the scouting side of things. What do you think about this draft class in comparison to like years past?
Man, your draft is only as good as your bottom half. So from the fourth all the way down to the seventh. And that brings a lot of depth when it comes down to that. And that's what we're getting back to. When I played, I was a fourth round draft pick, but heck, we had some 7 rounders make the team and get other guys cut as well. So, and that depth is very important because there's a lot of competition when you get down to that. So for us as an organization now, T, the first 3 rounds, we feel like we're supposed to hit on the first 3. Now after the 3, you get down to that 4th and 7th round, and you getting guys and you getting steals and you getting Pittsburgh Steelers. You ain't doing nothing but building a roster, So if you look at what Herbert is doing coming from Wisconsin, outside linebacker, 4th round draft pick, man, that's a steal for us. So when you just keep catching them steals from the 4th down to the 7th, you ain't doing nothing but building a hell of a team.
Yeah, and Herbig obviously has a great start to his career so far. I was down in Latrobe for a few days, obviously had the amazing preseason. So hopefully he can be the next in line of those 4th round picks for the Steelers. They're kind of few and far between. You were one of them, and we're hoping we get another with him. Let's talk about this cornerback group for a minute, Ike. Very different looking than it was just obviously a year ago. And there's pros and cons to having an older group. Got to address the elephant in the room, though. A couple guys here that they ran 4.6s or so coming into the league. Did you foresee that being an issue at all with the Steelers cornerback room this year? And how do you think that these guys are all going to gel together?
Jerry Rice never ran the 4.4 or 4.3. Jerry Rice played damn near 20 years. So it's a difference between training to run fast and actually playing fast on the field. But the guys that we got on the field now, other than our young guys, they're very instinctive. They got a lot of experience when it comes down to that cornerback position, and you can't put a time on experience. It's a lot of good anticipation. There's a lot of guys in that secondary who's not a rookie or a second year guy who's made a lot of plays, played a lot of snaps for the NFL. They just so happy to be a Pittsburgh Steeler now. I mean, when you're looking at a Pat Pete, probably make it to the Hall of Fame. You see what Minka is doing. DeMonte Casey always, regardless on his size or his speed, he always has been around the ball. That's something you can't coach his instinct. So we got some guys. We got some guys back there. Even though the outside world says a lot about a 40 speed, but when you popping that tape and they playing faster than guys who ran 4.3s, it's the experience and a high football IQ.
Like, let's talk about some of the younger players on the offensive side of the ball real quick. And one of the guys that has stood out, I mean, basically since day one, his rookie year, is George Pickens. Obviously, he's expanded on that, had an awesome summer down in Latrobe, and then he follows that up with basically a perfect showing on his 3 targets in the preseason. And so if you were back in your prime right now going against George Pickens, is this the type of receiver that you'd like to cover? Like, no, you're not going to rise up over me and get that football.
Man, I played against a lot of receivers. First of all, George Pickens is different. I call George an alien. Far as like body control, I have never seen a receiver with such good, great body control, especially at his height. But we can go down the line. Hines, Antonio Brown, Plexico Burris, Antoine Randall L, Santonio Holmes, Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, Martavis Bryant. So when you want to talk about receivers, that's exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers do well when it comes down to drafting. They draft receivers. I mean, how you catch Deontay Johnson in the later rounds? George is George. George is different. And he's going to be a playmaker. Him and Kenny Pickett are going to be making plays for a long time. But when it came down to receivers and the receivers I had to play, man, I had to play some hell of receivers at the time, whether it was on the team or just going against opposing teams' best receivers. So George's going to be different. I like George because I don't even think George knows how good he is. George is out there having fun, and that's the scary part about it. Once George figure out how good he really is, I know he say how good he is, but once he really figure it out and tune in and lock in, and what I mean by lock in is being a complete receiver, it's going to be very scary for a lot of people. I'm just so glad he wearing that black and gold.
You mentioned Kenny Pickett a little bit there as well. Obviously Pickett had the perfect 158.3 passer rating for the preseason. I know this comes against primarily backups, and it's like 5 drives. He scored a touchdown on every one of them. But have you seen everything that you were hoping to see from Pickett in year 2? And what do you expect from him in 2023?
Man, I saw that towards the end of the season last year. But this is what you get when you got a 4-year starter. Playing that quarterback position. You get a mature, you get a guy who understands what it is. And by the way, he went to the University of Pittsburgh, and we share the same building when it comes down to it. So he already knew what it was to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He already knows what it is to play in cold weather. He already knows the ins and outs. But just that maturity level, T, at that quarterback position for a guy who's been playing this 4 years. Kenny know how good Kenny is, and at some point in time, Kenny just need the reps. And I saw it last year towards the end of the season, like, okay, we got us a special quarterback. We got us a franchise quarterback in my mind. And Kenny Pickett, just off of his resume, and his resume said 4 years of college, that's a lot of snaps, that's a lot of experience. And by the way, his college is in the city of Pittsburgh, so he understands what it is to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So Kenny wasn't ever the issue, man. I always thought Kenny was going to take off around his time. And I thought his takeoff moment was our loss in Miami last year. And when him and Coach T was walking off the field, and it's a clip that's circling around when him and Coach T was walking on the field, Coach T was just telling them, look, it's going to be some games like this, but we're going to win more than we lose, and you're going to be our guy for that. So that one was just nothing but a blue check, a verification to let Kenny know okay, I can take off. So, and they say you usually learn, not usually, you do learn more from the losses in your life than what you're expected to do. And that loss and that conversation walking off that Miami field with Coach T said a lot about Kenny. I know Kenny took that to heart. And in my mind, I felt like that's what he just took off.
Yeah, you can definitely see his confidence and leadership. I think those are some of the traits that he possesses that could make him that guy for the Steelers. Just want to talk about one more player here, Ike, today, a name that we have not mentioned yet, and that is TJ Watt. Now, you retired 3 years before Watt came into the league, so you weren't able to play with him. But I want to get your thoughts on Watt and what you've seen from him so far in his career. I mean, by the end of this guy's career, could he be in that conversation where, like, yeah, you were up there with names like Troy Polamalu, the best that you've ever played with?
Man, it's letting you know how much TJ Watt love football. I don't know if you remember, but they was going through his contract situation, right? And TJ said, man, not really hell with my agent, but F all this. Let me sign this goddamn contract. The numbers is close enough. I need to get back downstairs to my teammates and get on the field and practice. Now this is during practice. So that's letting you know everything about TJ. I'm gonna make the money. I ain't worrying about the money. All I want to do is play football and be around guys and be around my guys on this field. So let me hurry up and sign this thing and go down and practice. So I think it was like a couple of dollars off that his agent was fighting for. And TJ said, man, hell with that. I'm about to sign this paper. Y'all two figure this out between the organization and my agent. But I'm about to sign this paper, man, because I need to hit the field and be back on the field with my teammates. So when I heard that story, I was like, this dude all the way different. And we ain't even going to talk about, former league defensive MVP in the NFL and TJ Watt. I think right now we have the most out of any organization defensive player of the years than any other organization. So that says a lot about what the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they draft and what they have an eye for. But TJ on and off the field. TJ Watt, huge in the community. He just so happened to have at one point in time 2 other brothers that played in the NFL between JJ, and we had his other brother at the fullback position for a year or two. So TJ just knew. He just understood, but TJ just different, man. And I don't know what it is about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they stay drafting somebody who's different.
I just got one more question for you today, and that is, what are your expectations for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Can you give us a record prediction by the end of the season? How do you think they're going to finish?
Man, I finish on a good note. I'm going to go political on you. We're going to finish on a good note, T.
Okay. That's it? Just a good note?
It's a good note, baby.
All right. I love it. Ike, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today. It's been a pleasure. You're welcome to join us anytime on the Steel Curtain podcast. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thanks for the invite, T.